If you've been inundated by those annoying robocalls on your cell phone, there may be some relief on the way for you. Starting next year, some of the major carriers, including Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, will be rolling out a new $100 million system that's designed to stop many of those fraudulent and unwanted calls. Joining us now to talk more about this is Ryan Eldridge from Nerds on Call. Okay, so I was reading this new system is called Stir Shaken, kind of a nod to James Bond, I guess, if you will. It's a complicated acronym, but the goal of this technology, very straightforward, to try to stop these scam phone calls we're all overwhelmed with. How does the system work?
Well, it works very similar to the way the spam system works. Essentially, everyone is sort of given a token or a certificate of authenticity for their phone number or the originating center of where the call is coming from. And then that information is passed along the line through carrier until it reaches its final destination, and where it's kind of graded on this is a good call, this is a questionable call, or this is a possible fraudulent call.
And so how is the system able to identify calls as good calls, questionable, or likely fraudulent? Those seem to be the three categories. How does it know?
Well, it knows on several different factors. One, the amount of calls that are going out. So if there's thousands and thousands of calls going out, I'll give you an example. In August, there were 148 million robocalls per day. That's 1.6 calls per second. And so that a massive amount of calls coming from one general area, they're pretty sure that's going to be a robocaller, and they can kind of say, hey, that's not cool. Or if there's a large number of calls versus a ratio of how many people actually answered those calls, they can kind of say, okay, this is obviously a spam situation going on.
So yeah, it's a high number of calls from one number, and nobody's picking up the phone. Everyone's letting it go to voicemail these days. These robocalls, right, they've gotten really out of hand here, right? There was one security firm that predicted by next year, nearly half of all calls made to cell phones are going to be fraudulent. How big a dent can this technology make in the problem, you think, Ryan?
You know, I honestly, I don't think it's going to make much of a dent at all. Unfortunately, it's just a little too late. $100 million technology rolling out that's been in process of being built for 3 years, and they're saying it's going to take 2 to 5 years to deploy it to cover every phone in the U.S. or 90% of the phones in the U.S. By the time this actually gets deployed, the technology is going to move on. And here's how I can really scare the heck out of you. Is we all saw Google Duplex earlier this year, where it was an automated system that sounded just like a regular human. There's also software that can take a particular voice and kind of mimic the voice, kind of create an avatar of a specific voice. Now, marry that technology with the data breaches that have been happening over the last decade, and you can easily pretend to be a teller at a bank, already know mother's maiden name and where they live, and then it sounds like you're talking to a real person, and they're saying, oh, I just need you to verify your PIN number. That's one possible. Or imagine we already know that we've got foreign actors trying to influence our elections. We could have massive phone calls from a fake candidate that's saying outrageous things in our ear and telling us things about different things. Or worse yet, if there's a real live terrorist attack, we may get our police responders, our first responders, and our firemen, they may get inundated with calls too that also sound authentic and being sent all over for things that aren't legitimate.
That's dangerous.
This is a really big problem beyond just the fact that it's an annoyance that we can't answer our phones anymore. And I think the technology, unfortunately, is just moving too fast, and these large companies are just too slow to move correctly. It's such an outdated system, and I think that we need a tighter regulation. We can't just let the companies, unfortunately, manage themselves in this case.
Yeah, because they seem to be moving at a pretty slow pace, and as you pointed out here, it's probably not going to be long before the scammers find some sort of workaround for this new system, unfortunately. It seems hopeless. In the meantime, just let it go to voicemail, right? All right, Ryan Eldridge from Nerds on Call. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.